being treated super unfairly right now. Donald Trump might need to come holler and give your boy a pardon so I could, stay home with my babies.
Sebastian Telfair, born June 9th, 1985. The saddest part about Sebastian Telfair's story isn't just that he went from Brooklyn's chosen prodigy to another name in the long line of NBA busts. It's that nearly 2 decades later, after burning through millions, after losing his career, after seeing prison more than once, he still doesn't understand why it all slipped away. He still points fingers, still blames the system, still has the absolute wrong people in his ear, literally, and still refuses to accept the truth that Sebastian Telfair is his own worst enemy, and his actions are the reason he's going back to prison. Back in 2004, he was marketed as the next great New York point guard. Adidas handed him a sneaker deal before he ever played a game. The NBA gave him opportunity after opportunity. He had every door open in front of him when he and his family had nothing. Yet in 2025, Telfair sits back in prison. Not for the gun case that once derailed him, not even strictly for the healthcare fraud scandal he pled guilty to, but because he violated his probation by failing to do something as basic as keeping a steady job and meeting his requirements. That's not the NBA's fault. That's not Adidas's fault. That's Sebastian Telfair refusing to grow up. And still, if you watch his recent interviews, you see the same teenage mindset in a grown man's body. He talks with bitterness toward the league that gave him his platform. He shrugs off the brand that made him a millionaire at 19, and he carries himself like the victim, not the author of his own downfall. Around him, the voices don't help. His own brother feeds his defiance, doubling down on the narrative that the world owes them something. It's an echo chamber of excuses, and it's only dragged him further down. Telfair's fall is bigger than basketball. His story is about what happens when mindset never catches up to opportunity. You can be talented enough to make it, gifted enough to attract the spotlight, lucky enough to cash in, but if you don't have accountability, it all disappears. And when it does, blaming everyone else won't bring it back. That's where Sebastian Telfair is today. A man in his 40s, still talking like it's everyone else's fault, still refusing to change, proof that all the chances in the world mean nothing if you never learn. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Sebastian Telfair was a 6-foot point guard from Coney Island, Brooklyn, and the cousin of Stephon Marbury. At Lincoln High School, he became one of the most hyped guards New York City ever produced, leading his team to 3 straight PSAL titles and a nationally followed senior season documented in Through the Fire. Originally committed to play at Louisville, he chose instead to declare for the 2004 NBA draft, where the Portland Trail Blazers selected him 13th overall in the lottery. Before playing a single NBA game, he signed a landmark sneaker deal with Adidas worth millions, at the time one of the richest ever for a player straight out of high school. Telfair's name was plastered across Slam magazine and Sports Illustrated, marketed as the next great floor general from New York, a flashy playmaker whose hype and brand seemed as big as his actual basketball promise. Other than being a bust on the court, let's focus on 3 reasons Sebastian Telfair still doesn't get it.
People in from my community shouldn't be doing those, federal time for no community service.
Stunt number 1, a lifetime without accountability. The biggest reason Sebastian Telfair still doesn't get it is because accountability has never been a part of his vocabulary. From the time he was a teenager on the cover of magazines, someone else was always at fault when things didn't go his way. If a coach benched him, they didn't believe in him. If the minutes were limited in Portland or Boston, it was because the team never gave him a fair shot. When Adidas cut ties, it became they, quote, used him and moved on. When the NBA turned the page, it was the league's fault for not valuing him. That same mentality followed him long after basketball ended. His latest prison sentence came not from conspiracy, but because he violated the simplest terms of his probation. Hold a steady job, check in, complete your requirements. Instead of owning that, he called it a paperwork error and begged Trump for a pardon. This pattern of shifting blame has been his undoing at every stage. On the court, it stunted him from adapting once defenders stopped respecting his shot and his small frame was exposed. Rather than adding to his game, he leaned on excuses about opportunity. Off the court, it kept him in a cycle of poor decisions, from gun charges to the healthcare fraud case to violating probation at 40 years old. Each situation demanded maturity and self-reflection. Instead, Telfair has responded with denial, anger, and the same old "everyone's against me, they're trying to break my spirit" attitude. Accountability is what separates those who stumble from those who recover. Plenty of NBA players fell short of expectations, but many adjusted, found roles, or rebuilt their lives after the league. Telfair hasn't, because he's never once taken the blame. Until he does, the cycle will only continue. Stunt number 2, the wrong circle, the wrong influence. If accountability was missing from Sebastian Telfair's life, the people around him only made sure it stayed that way. From his teenage years in Coney Island through his NBA run and now into adulthood, Telfair has rarely been surrounded by the type of voices that tell you the hard truth. Instead, he's been flanked by friends and family who either benefited from his early fame or enabled the worst part of his personality. They celebrated the spotlight, but when it came to helping him grow, they failed him, or worse, pushed him in the wrong direction. In a recent interview with Vlad TV, his brother has echoed Sebastian's bitterness, parroting the idea that the NBA and Adidas wronged him, and that people are out to break his spirit. That's not guidance, that's gasoline on a fire. When someone is already struggling with immaturity and resentment, the last thing they need is someone in their ear reinforcing those narratives. Someone that has always been carried by the Telfair name. When Sebastian needed a circle that could pull him aside and say, "No, this is on you. It's always been you." Instead, he's got cheerleaders for his excuses. The result has been a cycle of poor decisions and self-sabotage. From blaming coaches in the NBA to blaming the system when probation was violated, Telfair has never had that inner circle to check his thinking. Compare that to other players who stumbled but recovered. Many had mentors or honest voices who helped them face reality. Sebastian has had the opposite. At 40 years old, he's still leaning on the wrong influence, still deflecting, still letting outside noise keep him from seeing the truth, and still has the wrong circle. Stunt number 3, immaturity and the wrong mindset from the start. The third reason Sebastian Telfair still doesn't get it is because his maturity was flawed from the very beginning. Unlike many of his peers who entered the NBA and used the pressure as motivation to grow, Telfair approached early fame with entitlement. Adidas handed him millions before he played a game. Portland invested a lottery pick in him. The media called him the next great New York guard. Instead of letting those blessings humble him and fuel his work, they inflated his ego. At 19, he already felt like he had made it, when in reality, the hard part was just beginning. That immaturity never left. On the court, it showed in the way he failed to adapt to his size and lack of consistent shooting and got exposed. Off the court, it showed in his choices, the gun charges, the healthcare fraud scheme, and the inability to meet basic probation requirements. Rather than learning from each failure, he carried himself like the world owed him another chance. Life trauma and the weight of being from Coney Island shaped him, yes, but instead of turning that into maturity, he leans into bitterness. Now at 40 years old, that same teenage mindset still drives him. He sits in interviews, taking shots at the NBA and Adidas, the very entities that gave him opportunity beyond what most can dream of. He insists the system wronged him, when in reality, his downfall has always been self-inflicted. And that's the real tragedy of Sebastian Telfair's story. The money, fame, and platform came early, but the maturity never followed. And without maturity, every blessing turned into another wasted opportunity. What started as one of New York's brightest hopes became a man stuck in the same mindset that doomed him from the start. All in all, Sebastian Telfair's story is one of wasted opportunities, but more than that, it's about wasted lessons. The NBA gave him a platform, Adidas made him a millionaire, and life gave him chance after chance to grow up. Yet at 40, he remains locked in the same cycle of immaturity, deflection, and misplaced anger. He blames the league that drafted him, the brand that believed in him, and a system that gave him leniency. But the truth is simple. He never held himself accountable, never removed the wrong voices around him, and never developed the maturity to carry the weight of success. That's why he sits in prison today, still pointing fingers instead of facing the mirror. His story is proof that talent and opportunity mean nothing when the mindset behind them never evolves. Salute, it's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.
God the biggest homie, you know what I'm saying? We still making our moves. I'm still gonna tell my story. We still doing what we gotta do.